Hamstring tendinopathy, tendonitis, or whatever you want to call it, tendon pain, is a really common condition that we see in runners. Now, the reason for that is as we run quicker, our hamstring strain and load increases. So if you think about it as simple as running slowly, running fast, and sprinting, you see a dose-dependent response on strain on the hamstring. It continues to go up. Now, whenever we have a tendinopathy, we need a good quality unload, reload treatment plan. I'm not going to be speaking about the unloading. Today, I'm going to be speaking about the reloading. And we're going to go through a really clear beginner to intermediate to high load exercise routine to do for your hamstring. Now, these exercises can help with discomfort and they can certainly help improve the capacity of the tendon. They should be paired with advice from a quality medical professional and in most cases, a good quality running program. Now, I work in this big gym space, as you can see, and as you're going to see as we go through these movements. I see patients just next door. We come into the gym, we go through some movements, we look at some strength, we look at some power, we start somewhere on the continuum. For most people, it's in this half, and we progress them over to this half. So let's get to it. So when we think about hamstring anatomy, we need to think two parts. There's muscle and there's tendon. And when we're loading the tendon, we know that the longer it gets, what we call elongation, the more strain we're going to get in that tendon. So we think about where it inserts and where it attaches. We've got the knee and the hip are the two main joints that we're going to speak about. So we're looking to think of rehab. Our movements are going to include one or two of the following: bending at the hip or bending at the knee. So I like to think of this first one in two parts. Now, if we think of the anatomy, knee, hip, the hamstring's going to be in here. So I can very simply lie down and lift hips by keeping my pelvis nice and neutral. Now, we don't have to keep it neutral because we're worried about injury, but because we're going to be thinking about the position of it when we want to put more strain on the hamstring. So if I simply have feet down and lift up, I'm going to feel some hamstring and some glute. Now, while I was saying there's two parts, this would be the first part. What we can do to make it a little bit more hamstring is lift up our feet and slowly bring them out. Now, if I get to this position and lift out, I can feel that's more already on the hamstring. To make it a little bit harder, I can continue to walk out. And to make it even a little bit more difficult, I can go on the one leg. Now, I can do lots of different versions. I can lift up, I can come down, I can lift up on two and down on one. We're on to level two. Now, I've got a box. You can use a stair, you can use a chair, anything where your heel is a little bit elevated. So what we're going to do, we're going to come down back into that same position. We're going to have toes up to the ceiling, heels back, and I'm going to slide back just a little bit. Now, this is going to put a little bit more strain on that hamstring. Now, if you think to the exercises before, I can go on the one, or I can come back down. People will find generally if the hamstring is sensitive, something as simple as doing a hold, and that might be 20 to 30 seconds, and coming back down and doing that a couple of sets can be a good warmer, good for activation. Or if they're feeling as though they want to increase the strain, going through that full range of motion. Now, if I push that box out, I'm going to feel it a little bit more. While I was telling you before about the pelvis position, if you come into this position, what you should be able to do without changing anything but your hip position, if you just drop down, you should be able to increase and decrease that pelvic position. So why I like people to keep it neutral and squeeze their butt is it does load the hamstring up a little bit more, and it's very easy to cheat and drop into here. So we want to keep a line, squeezing, heels back down, and you should be able to feel that pulling through there. So a single leg deadlift is a great way to challenge the hamstring, the back, and the whole kinetic chain. Now, I'm going to do it from this way and facing you so you've got a better angle. But what we're going to do is a modified version. So back leg is going to be up a little bit. Front leg is going to have a small bend in the knee. We want to have the dumbbell on the same side. And what we're trying to do is keep the lower limb nice and stable, but we're going to pivot and bend at the hip because we know that hamstring's at the back. So I'm going to hold on to something, so I've got a little bit of balance, and I'm slowly coming down until I can feel the hamstring, which I really can, and then I'm coming back up. So if I feel as though I can get a little bit further, I'm going to go as far as I can and come back up. Now what you'll see is if I bend my knee just a little bit more, I'm going to be able to get further down. And you can do this with a barbell as well, but I like doing it with a dumbbell or a kettlebell. So if you're coming from this angle and not holding on to anything, back leg is going to be sitting in that position, small bend of the knee, and I'm slowly coming down. And you're going to feel it on the hamstring pretty much straight away. And then making sure when you're coming back up, we're not just bending at the back and we're bending up at the hip. And you'll find you should be able to go pretty heavy with this one once you get the technique right, and then coming up. But with doing this, there's not a lot of ways to stuff it up, because as soon as you're bending at the hip, we know because of the anatomy of hamstrings being that loaded. Start lighter until you feel comfortable in that position, and then progress the weight forward. So just remember me saying the tendon is like this band. When it's lengthened, which is what we're going to see when we're sprinting at high speed, we're going to see higher strain. Now, what we want to start to do before getting back to sprinting, and there's lots of different ways to do this, so don't think this is the only way. We can do things like some quicker running, progressing to sprinting to prepare ourselves for sprinting. We can do some drills and strides, or within the gym, we can start to do things a little bit quicker. Now, remember, because of where the hamstring is, it's a little bit harder to load lengthened and quicker without sprinting. So a couple of ways we can do that is using a slider or even a towel will help. And what we're going to do is we're going to set that up on back a little bit. We're going to set that up on something that slides. So what we can do is, if we have one or we have two, we're going to come up and we can come out quite quickly and come back in. Come out quite quickly and come back in. We can also do that with a ball. So we can be up. So remember, after other levels of exercises, we're going to be up high, load on the hamstring. We can come in quick and come out quick. Come in quick, come out quick. We can do some hitting, but we truly need to understand that nothing is going to be able to completely prepare us to get back to sprinting other than doing some sprinting. We're on to the final stage. We're thinking about sprinting. Now, we're not going to go out there and do a kilometre worth of sprints. We need to figure out a way to slowly reintroduce some of that high speed stuff. I'm going to tag below some great resources of some people doing some drills that can really help introduce us back to sprinting. But we think about, again, back to the anatomy, when is the load going to be highest? It's when we are taking off and accelerating, and when we're stopping and decelerating. So if we can start to reintroduce that into our training program with some simple strides at a percentage we can control, and then slowly increase, we might go from 60% of the maximum sprint to 70 to 80 over a good consistent period of time. We can start to load that hamstring with that high strain and keep it nice and strong. Now, below in the video description, I'm going to give a really brief example of some return to higher level running. Now, remember, you're doing a higher strain, quicker running. The risk of your hamstring maybe getting a little bit sore or sensitive is going to be a bit higher. But as we said at the start of the video, you're going to be doing this along with a good qualified medical professional. So please don't take this as medical advice for yourself, educational purposes only.